Hey, welcome to Real Talk, where we give real answers to real worship leaders with real questions. If you are a real worship leader with a real question and you want a real answer, head right here and submit your question for a future episode. Got some good questions this week? Let's talk about it. After moving back to my hometown area, I started going to a church I had previously been over the music before I left. In the meantime, a teenage boy became the MD. I made my intentions very clear to my pastor and the MD that I did not desire nor intend to take over, but had a desire to help train/mentor the young man, who I've known for several years. After several months of him not listening, creating anxiety and chaos for the team, as well as him going through some life things, bad choices, he stepped down and I was asked to step in. However, I'm finding out after the fact that he's been bad-mouthing me to many people in the church. What advice do you have for me going forward as the MD? He's no longer at the church, but he still talks to many of these people. Some are his family. I feel like defending myself is a losing battle and would only make me look bad, but it's wearing on me to deal with it and not say anything. Yeah, I mean, that stinks. Let me just say that stinks. It's never easy when that happens in ministry and somebody leaves your church and they start talking bad about you behind your back. Unfortunately, I think it's just the way things go in ministry. And I don't really know what you can do about it. I mean, what are you going to do that makes you look good? Like, are you going to go to him and say, "Yo, boy, I heard you been talking about me," and like just yell at him? I mean, what are you going to do? I think the only reason I would address it is if it is causing discord in your church. Like if it becomes not just this teenage boy talking crap about you behind your back, but it becomes, okay, there's like a faction in the church that hates me now because of this. Then it becomes a problem. But I mean, I don't even know if that's like a problem that you can deal with like in a meaningful way. I mean, you could get together with them and be like, "Hey, I don't like when you're doing this or whatever, I don't know, try to hash things out." But some people are just that way. And what are you going to, I mean, you can't control what he does. And I understand it stinks because you were like trying to help him out and you probably, had some sort of meaningful relationship with him. And then he just went off and did his own thing. And now he doesn't like you anymore. Sometimes, I'm sorry, sometimes that just happens in ministry. I mean, I think back on my 18 years of ministry, and I'm like, I've had people like that. I don't know. I don't think about them that often. I mean, occasionally I'll hear somebody has said something in the past, and I'm like, I have other things to worry about. I guess my encouragement to you would just be to be as good as you can possibly be in the position that you're in. So when he talks to other people in your church, they're like, "Dude, what are you talking about? Quit being an idiot." Like, be so good that other people defend you. You don't have to defend yourself. And maybe that's it. Maybe just be so good that other people defend you. I mean, I got to imagine that when people hear this kid talk, like, not everybody's taking him seriously. You're probably hearing some comments and it's frustrating for you. I get it. I'm frustrated sometimes when I hear comments like that. But I think, like I said, I think this is going to happen in ministry. You're never going to make everybody happy. I'm sure people talk about me behind my back and don't like the way that I do things. And just be so good that everybody looks at the person who's complaining about you and they're like, "Dude, what are you talking about? You don't make any sense." And they stop listening to him. I don't know what it is. Just use this as a means of getting better. And I just thought of a video I made a while back. It was about Charles Spurgeon's advice for handling criticism in ministry. So I'll link that down below. It was from one of his letters to his students. He has those lectures, or the lectures to the students. I forget what it's called exactly, but one of them was about criticism. And I think that video would really help you. So I'll link that down below. There were like 5 lessons from him about dealing with criticism in ministry, which I think is exactly what you're going through right now. So I'll link that down below. Check that video out. We have not had live musicians in years. We use various performance tracks. Our choir is made up of majority 70 plus, and they are not the best singers. I have made what I think is every effort to maintain the choir, but it is becoming increasingly difficult. The majority cannot find their parts when music is sent out ahead of rehearsal, and I spend most of our practices teaching parts over and over due to inability to retain. I also lead the 3-person praise team that was developed during COVID and teach our children/youth songs when they have the opportunity to participate in the worship service. Shoo, I'm tired. I believe in my heart it's time to make some changes. Can you give any ideas on how to present to our pastor the need to think about doing away with the choir? Oh, we are a very small church that doesn't have a lot of younger people willing to commit to serving at this time. I mean, I guess this is the question of how do we transition? This is what it sounds like you're saying. How do we transition from a traditional way of doing things to moving to a more contemporary way of doing things? To sum up your question, I think that's what I'm hearing. You had a choir, now you want a praise team. And I think it just starts with talking to your pastor about it. I mean, I have some other things that I want to say about it, but if this is how you feel, check with your pastor, because you're not going to do anything without your pastor being involved. So sit down with him and talk to him about it and figure out what his thoughts are on it, because this sort of change is something that I don't think it happens like, first of all, I don't know if it's necessary. That's one of the things I'm going to say later, but it's not something that happens in like a year or in a couple months or like in a moment's decision. And you're just like, hey, choir, it's been real. You've been here for 50 years, but bye. Never do anything again. And maybe it's more of like I'm almost viewing this in terms of my worship team's not prepared, sort of way, even though it's a choir in this case. But I think it's appropriate to have expectations for choir members. And what are you frustrated with? You're frustrated with they can't find their parts when the music is sent out ahead of rehearsal, and you spend most of their practices teaching parts over and over due to inability to retain. And so maybe it just becomes a conversation of, I'm going to send out the songs ahead of time and I need you to look over them. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you're doing too many songs. I mean, are you learning new songs all the time? Pick some songs they know and see how they do. I mean, they can't forget everything. This is always, I'm releasing this episode on December 3rd. This is something to talk about in the new year, I think, to like reset expectations and say, hey, this year I want us to focus on X, Y, and Z with the choir. And I know that this isn't what you want to hear, and you're like, I just want to get rid of the choir. But I'm kind of taking this from the view of, okay, well, you don't have other people to help. You have a 3-person praise team, which, I mean, that can help, but do you want to put all your eggs in that basket? I don't know. Talk to your pastor about that and see if that's the appropriate thing to do in your church. I guess I'm having a hard time determining whether you're just upset with the choir because they're not prepared, or if you're like, I want to use this as the catalyst to get rid of the choir, because those are kind of two different questions. And so you get 2 different answers, which I've kind of touched on both. Do you actually need to get rid of the choir? If you do, then you need to talk to your pastor about it. If you're not interested in getting rid of the choir and you're just frustrated that they're not prepared, then you need to talk to them about expectations, which I understand can be hard, but the first of the year is always the best time to do it and say, hey, this year we're going to focus on showing up prepared. So I'm going to do a better job resourcing you. We are going to pare our song selection down so we aren't doing as many new songs. And so when we come to rehearsal, I want you to know your part or whatever. And one of the things that will help with this, I guess it could apply to a choir, and you'll probably need it for your worship team as well, but is to have a set of expectations that people actually know. Maybe you're just expecting them to know these things ahead of time, and they've been on the choir for 50 years, and nobody has ever said these things to them, and they come with their own baggage of what they think the expectations are. Maybe they think they should just show up to rehearsal and not have their parts learned. So if you need help with setting those expectations, then you can adapt my worship team toolkit for the choir, perhaps, and maybe this is what you hand out to spark the conversation at the beginning of the year. So check out my worship team toolkit down in the description below. It is my worship ministry overview, which I think you could easily adapt to your choir. You could definitely use it for your praise team as well. And you can basically just copy and paste what I have there. This is exactly what I give to my new worship team members whenever they join the worship team. So check that out down in the description below. Other than that, until I see you in the next video, keep leading worship well.